Hello and welcome to Back to the Feature, the show we talk about movies past, present, and future. Today we're talking about the new movie that hit theaters this week, Ghost in the Shell.
They created me, but they cannot control me.
Ghost in the Shell is a remake of a 1995 anime classic, Ghost in the Shell. This is, the original Ghost in the Shell is a movie that I think I saw probably in my early teens, probably 13, 14 maybe when I first saw it, and was always really intrigued by the tone. I don't think that when I first saw it, I think I totally got what was going on in that movie. There's a lot of really big existential questions that it asks, and
there's a lot of ideas.
I was very excited when I heard that this movie was coming out, and I thought that ScarJo was a good pick overall to play the Major. I know everybody is talking about whitewashing controversy that apparently is happening around this movie. We're not really going to talk about that. We're just going to talk about the movie today because that's what we went to go see, was just to go see the movie. So overall, I definitely anticipated this movie. John, what do you think about Ghost in the Shell? As far as a franchise, what's your experience with it?
Well, I'm a huge fan of The Matrix. My favorite film of all time. I really enjoyed Dark City too. So Ghost in the Shell is definitely up my alley. And I walked into it with really no expectations besides knowing that it's got all these other things.
Yeah, what
it's got the history. Perfect. So I knew kind of the influence that it
kind of legendary status really, and kind of those having those interests in those films and liking those films so much, because I know you've told me before The Matrix is your favorite film, so it's I think when I heard that they were making this movie, I was kind of excited for you to be able to see it as well in that way. So, but
yeah, I really wish that I would have had that source material going into this movie, because I feel like I almost watched it maybe a little naive. In a way, I really did enjoy this movie. But it was like going into watching the 95 anime then afterwards, and some of those ideas that it was exploring, it's definitely different. There's a lot more depth to it. But I already had my take on the live action remake, so I know we were watching. I was like the anime, and I was like, I bet you're really gonna like the live action. And when we got back together, our thoughts were very different, which is very rare. Our thoughts are usually pretty spot on, and they were very different.
And we passed like ships in the night on this one. I have to say I was a bit disappointed overall with Ghost in the Shell. Having been a fan of the 95 original film, I'd seen it a couple times before then and really enjoyed it. And then just I think, and I didn't have super high expectations. I had already heard some people say that the movie wasn't that great, whether they didn't like it or its pacing or anything like that. And I was definitely expecting it to be slow and more cerebral. I mean, that is Ghost in the Shell. I mean, the action sequences they're very few and far between in the original. It's more about the ideas and the themes and those really deep questions that it's able to ask in that. And I think that's the problem of this movie was missing that one has in spades, is that it definitely feels like they're trying to put a whole lot into one film, and it doesn't really ever give time or really actually flesh out its ideas about a lot of the themes or questions. It sort of presents some things visually, but never really goes in depth onto any of them, or really gives you an answer about what they think about that thing, where I think that it's very clear in the 95 movie what that movie is trying to say and what its opinion is on intelligence and on the soul and about our perception of reality. And I think very much like The Matrix, I think that's the big thing The Matrix took from the original, was that idea of you get done with that movie and you're sort of what is real? How do I define my reality? And all of a sudden you're asking yourself questions and you think you can see through walls all of a sudden. But this one really, I feel like it just didn't have that lack of depth. I think that was the first big thing for me, was the lack of depth.
Yes, I didn't really know what to expect. How in depth the 95 film was. Even after watching it, I watched them back to back pretty much. So it was almost like walking out of the weekend watching these two films. I really blended the two movies together in a way. Whereas whatever the one movie lacked, the other one made up for, and I just kind of combined it very subjectively. I feel
it's kind of like when you read the book.
Yeah.
And then
I've just been thinking about Ghost in the Shell, but the universe of Ghost in the Shell. So I think watching them the way that I did for the first time, I felt like it really enhanced or strengthened the remake, especially with it being my first experience with it.
Yeah, with both movies too.
Yeah, both movies. I did like the anime movie better. That movie, you can tell, is a classic, and it's gone so much. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, you can see all the influence. Just kind of, I mean, you still see Westworld is still doing Ghost in the Shell now.
Yeah,
and I think that actually is funny because I think that really hurts this movie is that Westworld talked about those same questions and did it so much better than this film did, and it really just didn't give the time to those things.
I think the thing that I really liked the most about the new Ghost in the Shell was the world building. The movie is very aesthetically pleasing. I think the visuals and like that sci-fi dystopian future. I just love the way that it's filmed, the way that the camera kind of floats through it, and the way that you get like the practical and the special effects. And then seeing ScarJo kick some ass was fun. That one of the action scene that they show in all the trailers is an awesome action set.
Yeah, and we get the 5-minute clip of it as well. I was able to see it then. Yeah,
which I wish they wouldn't have spoiled that because that's a little sad because there are some other action scenes in the movie that just didn't have the same punch.
Oof. Well, and some of it may have been an understatement.
Yeah, well, there is another good action set piece, but there is some action that's not filmed very well.
Yeah.
So like some of that is inconsistent throughout this movie, where you're just like, wow, this is shot really well, and then there's other times where it's like, oh, like who started grabbing the camera and kind of moving it around, and it just didn't look right. So I mean, like, and you can tell that. There's just things in it that they had to change. I feel like, and maybe not for the better.
I definitely agree. The movie is visually striking, and the cityscapes look amazing. I really like a lot of the ideas. It reminds me a bit of Blade Runner and Minority Report and a few other films, but overall, I felt like it kind of stood up as its own world. I think that them showing a lot of the Ghost in the Shell technology was really well done. Yeah. Like you get to see like the fingers typing, and then the inaudible dialogue between them because of their like kind of like cerebral implants and stuff. They're able to talk to each other. So it's cool to see a lot of that technology coming to the live film. But it definitely, I feel like this movie overall was a lot of style over substance. It looked really great and the packaging was great, but overall it really wasn't as deep or thought-provoking as its source material. And I feel like it was definitely a missed opportunity. Coming from, having been so familiar, and this is the thing too I felt like was for me as a fan anyway, and maybe other fans will agree with me on this, that I had an issue with is how it used, and I think it's pretty obvious from the trailers, they used some of the set pieces from the original. I don't feel like I'm spoiling because...
yeah, there's some shot for shot.
There's some shot for shot stuff that we have seen, and I mean, particularly the chase through the alleys and markets in the middle of the original, and then of course the spider tank scene. And I don't feel like that's spoilers for this movie because this story is different. It's not the Puppet Master. They're not doing a shot for shot remake of the original, and I think that in a way... it was kind of to the detriment of the movie. It feels like they're trying to take all the source material and jam it into one movie, but then keep the set pieces from the original in the same spot. And I think the problem with that is that they recreate these set pieces for, in my opinion, a lesser story and a story that was not fleshed out as well. I feel like if you were going to use the spider tank in the alley, you should have applied them to, the same plot. Because I feel like in the original movie, the action is a result of the plot and the story and the characters' motivations and actions. They're not just there as action set pieces. They tell big parts of the story. And so I think that when you put those set pieces inside of a different story, they're so much less effective. And for me as a fan, it didn't really service me as a fan going, oh, wow, look, they're recreating this scene. It felt like, oh, they're taking this scene and putting it in this different story that doesn't work as well. And then again, it feels like a waste. I think overall I would have rather seen them just do their own original set pieces, like the first set piece that was I think, the best of the film.
Of the action set pieces. I did like the quieter moments. A lot of people saying this movie's boring. I mean, if you get bored easy, then yeah. But I felt the movie was really interesting. And I just love watching these types of movies. Mm-hmm. I just love films where it makes you think and the world is built fine. And I know you're a longtime fan, so like for me, coming right out of the gate, not being a fan of this, but being like a fan of this type of science fiction films, it did it for me. I was fine with it. I was like, this is an entertaining movie. I want to see it again. Just kind of get more take on it, because it does drift from the source material, but I feel like it still has really interesting social commentary in and of itself in this movie.
Yeah.
It might not be, it might, you might need
fully realized.
Yeah, it's not fully realized. I think you do have to search for that a little bit and pull that out yourself. And, if you can do that and just engage the film, I think you can enjoy it. But
yeah, I never found the movie to really be boring. I just felt it to be benign, and I think that's an issue with it for me too. Though it's definitely not boring. I think it's not long enough to be boring. Because I went in there at 6:45 showing, and it was 8:30 when I was leaving. I was like, oh wow, is this over?
Yeah.
I was surprised how quick I was in and out of the theater. So I really don't feel like it was boring and just sort of like, oh man, I'm sitting here forever. But it definitely, it didn't have a lot of bite or teeth or just enough depth with the characters or the story or the themes that... Like I said, it was just kind of very sterile and maybe monotone. And I think that's why a lot of audiences are kind of going like, well, this is kind of boring. And I think a lot of people were expecting it like a big action movie. And I think that's a big misinterpretation, I think, of definitely what Ghost in the Shell is. Which is more of a crime and like political, like I said, thriller, and then really an action movie. And I think I would definitely praise it, and especially watching it this last weekend with you, the original. It definitely gave me actually even deeper love for that movie. I really love the way that it uses its action set pieces within the story.
I know you were saying the '95 film is really clear too. I think it's at least 2 or 3 watches though to get a clarity. Because I mean, like, obviously I can pull out some of these themes, the obvious themes, but I think there's so much going on in it. There's a lot of complexities in the story that like repeat watches you can get a lot out of. So I'm excited to revisit the '95 film.
I think there's a lot of depth there, but I think it paints these themes with a very broad brush.
I agree.
That I think that you're able to extrapolate and go into a lot of places, and I think that it's so universally applicable.
I feel like there's so many little corners. Like there's
I definitely
there's so many little intricacies to the story.
It's so funny we're talking about the '95 movie so much more right now. But I
watch it if you haven't watched it. Seriously, it's a great movie.
I highly suggest going to see the original. Even if you're really not into anime, it's a very different movie than that.
Yeah.
And I think that really,
very much,
and it really sticks out. I think from what people think about when they think about that genre. It's definitely one to check out. But yeah, it paints with these really with a broad stroke where I think that you can extrapolate and go into these corners. And I definitely agree. It's one to watch multiple times because I feel like I've gotten more and more out of it the more I watch it.
Yeah.
And the more I think my love for the original grows. But yeah, so I think
sorry to interrupt, but just for me, just going off it, just seeing it the one time and seeing what the source material is, and then going into the live action movie, I feel like the live action movie is a pretty faithful adaptation, minus some of the deeper complexities and themes that you're talking about, but a lot of that stuff
stylistically, definitely.
Yeah, stylistically. Yeah. So that's kind of my take on it.
No, I think that like talking about. I know we talked about it quite a bit, even before the show was gone on, because obviously, like we said, it's very rare. Like when we start talking about, what are you gonna do the final grade for? And we said what we were gonna really. What? So it's not often that happens. So there's been a bit of deliberating about this today, but I think that there's a lot of clarity here. I think since we talked about it a lot. So I'd say overall, John, then what is your kind of final summary and your grade for the 2017 Ghost in the Shell? I'm sorry we talked about the original a lot today, guys, but I think it was still worth it.
Yeah, I think you have to balance the two a little bit. When you're pulling from source material like that, and they are doing a shot-for-shot remake through a lot of it, but then changing the story up, you got to talk about the original. And it is such a classic film. It was great to get it in this weekend too. But I'm sitting at probably like a B- for this film. I did really enjoy it. It's a film that I plan on revisiting. I thought all the performances were really good. I thought the world was visually stunning. Clint Mansell's score, I thought, was it perfectly set the mood with it. It wasn't over the top musically, but it was definitely in there. And I just really enjoyed the themes that it did present. And that's without having the source material, the '95 film.
Yeah, for me, kind of my final summary, and then grade for the film. Overall, it just was kind of, as I've described, just sort of a benign experience. I thought that everybody performed well as far as the actors go. I really didn't have any issues with anybody, but I don't think there's too many that stood out. I did really like Batow. I thought that he was portrayed quite well, but even then, I didn't get too excited about anybody really leaving the theater And then I think that overall the story, the themes, and the characters aren't quite given enough, I think, for us to really care or have those stakes, especially in the moments where it really needs to have stakes. So for me, overall, it was not my favorite. Not my favorite watch at the theater this year. I'm gonna give Ghost in the Shell a D+. Visually striking, but just an empty shell in the end of the day, I think. Okay, guys, that has been our short, hopefully not spoiler review. I don't think we said anything. Tell us in the comments if we spoiled anything for you. You can yell at us. You can also find us on Twitter at BacktoFeature and on Facebook at /BacktoFeature. I've been Giovanni Carlo.
And I'm John Vanderloop.
And we'll see you guys next time.
How many were there before me?
She was supposed to have a clean brain. I order you to terminate.
They created me, but they cannot control me.